أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم ثم السلام على آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم الأجمعين إلى يوم الدين صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأجل فرجهم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى صدق الله العظيم صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. So we've been looking at this sentence of Imam Hussein alayhi salam when he said ridam bi qadaihi wa tasliman li amri. I accept what he intended and I am at peace with his orders. And I said the subject of our talks would be, and in the middle of my chaos, there is you. I will go to Surah Al-Duha and inshallah probably at the weekend when the children are here, they will probably inshallah learn about it. But today I promised we would look at how we exercise this muscle of tawakkul, how we can actually make it to work, okay? But before that, I had an unusual question asked to me this morning. And somebody said, well, I understand you're talking about tawakkul. I said, I think so. And they said, but what is the one message? If you wanted one message to go out to everybody who's listening, forget about everything you're saying everywhere. Give me the one message that you want to say to them from all your majalis. And it made me think. Because, we can elaborate on a lot of things. But what really do I want to convey when I'm talking about tawakkul? And it made me think. So to me it boils down to, and I was asked to say it in one sentence, which is even more difficult. If you ask me to give you a lecture, I'll talk about it for 30 minutes. But one sentence and say what you want to convey. So maybe the thing that I want to convey is, when you're knocked down by life, because that's when trust kicks in, doesn't it? When you're knocked down by life, you need to reach out to someone who is also Ahlul Bayti, who knows, who loves you enough to raise their hands for you and hold you through it. You need to do that. And then you need to depend on God for the results. You can't do it on your own. Even Hussein needed Zainab. So it's really important you're able to find someone whom you can reach out to. And I say this in particular, it's got to be Ahlul Bayti. One of the things I was reading in the Quran, I need to share this with you. You should have a bitana friend. Do you know what a bitana friend is? Bitana comes from batan. You know what batan is? Belly. If you Google belly friend, it's two friends who are pregnant at the same time. But a bitana friend is somebody who can keep your secrets, help you through them, but not regurgitate them. So, let me rephrase this. The one message I'd like you to take back find a bitana friend. And when you find them, like Imam Ali says, don't let go. Push, shove, yank hair, do what you have to do. Hold on to them and then trust in God. Okay, now we go into our exercising our muscles, okay? So first, baby steps. After all these talks we did in the last 3 days, the first one from those talks, and then I'll move further, is do your 110% and then hand it over to Him. Just hand it over. And the best way to hand it over is to actually write it down. Write it down on a piece of paper. Fold it and put it somewhere, write it in a language, and if they find it and they read it, you don't want that, okay? So write it in a language nobody else can understand. And then read the ayah 40-44, وَأُفَوِّضُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بَصِيرٌ بِالْعِبَادِ. And you will see as we go on the next stage of what's going to happen. The second thing is that you've got to ask Him, وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ. When you say, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. Surah number 2, ayah 45. You ever need help, ask Him through perseverance, patience, and salah. If you haven't been praying on time or haven't been praying, revisit your salah. See the difference it will make. And the third thing is continually ask Him, like Imam Zainul Abidin said, change what is bad in me in what is good in you. Tell Him to change it. Tell Him to have this shift, like this. Have you seen what these caterpillars look like? When you look at them and you think, ew. And then suddenly they become butterflies. So the caterpillars of sins, just ask Him to change. There's a beautiful dua. I read it every day after takbir. You've probably heard me, which is, Ya Muhsinu qad atakal Musi, or the one who does ihsan in front of you, the one who is drenched in sin. فَتَجَاوَزْ عَنْ قَبِيهِ مَا عِنْدِ بِجَمِيلِ مَا عِنْدَكَ يَا كَرِيمٌ. Change what is bad in me with what is good in you. And we'll see how that works in a minute. So that's your first baby steps there. Now, we need to be able to manifest trust. See, I and you can say, yeah, I trust Allah. We can all say that. Each one of us can sit there and say, yeah, definitely, tawakkul ala Allah. But how do you measure it? There must be a measurement, right? I think it's really important. In life, you must have measurements. Otherwise, you can't tell. How do you know what is good or what is bad? How do you know you and I have trust? And it's not looking at somebody else, looking at me. I'm looking at myself. If you look at the Prophet, when he was in Makkah, before Ba'that, before Jibreel comes with the revelation, he didn't talk about Islam. He was a friend. He was a neighbor. He was someone who people worked with. He set up processes to reduce injustice. It was called Hilful Fudul. When he saw something was wrong, he stood up for it. But they knew that it was a bit weird because he didn't do what they did. But he knew that he was the most kind, the most honest, and the most trustworthy person in Makkah. And I don't have to tell you that because you all know they called him As-Sadiq or Al-Amin. So to me, a benchmark is to have that benchmark of Rasulullah, right? And Quran says, Surah number 3, ayah 31, In kuntum tahibbun Allah, if you love Allah, by extension, if you love yourself. Because you will only recognize Allah if you recognize yourself. So, in kuntum tuhibbun Allah, if you love Allah, fattabi'uni, follow me, the Prophet says. Now, I explained this before, I'll repeat it again. Ittiba is when somebody is walking on the sand, you're putting your foot exactly in every footstep of theirs. Right? So it says, follow me to the letter. The consequence will be, yuhbibkumullah, Allah will love you. وَيَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ, and He will forgive your sins. Inna Allaha ghafurur rahim, you all know this. So He is the one who is forgiving and merciful. So what is my benchmark? So first I'm going to give you 5, and then we're going to go to Surah Al-Furqan, which many of you have heard me before, but Quran says, in nafati dhikra, always good in repetition. So the Prophet tells Imam Ali, to be a believer, you need to adopt 103 qualities. And they're categorized in 5 sections. I'm not going to go into the 103. Don't worry. You don't have to list them. 5 categories. He said 5, so I'm going to stick to 5. 5 fingers, 5 categories. Okay? He said the first characteristic of a believer is that he's continuously in thought. He's continuously wanting to change. He's not stagnant. Always looking at how am I going to get better. Not I've reached this now and that's it, khalas. Okay? So there's always a thought process of saying, how can I become better in everything? I used to have a friend, I think he's still a friend. I used to have a friend who hated techie stuff, technology. He's too far away now, technology. And I remember when the first computers came out, and I said, you gotta have one of these. He said, no. Who said? I said, you just got to. So I ended up buying one and giving it to him. And I won't say what he said, and now he just sits on his phone like nobody's business. So I saw him the other day, and he's gone back to where he lives. And I said, what happened? He said, you. It's not me. We need to change with the times. Okay, you can't say, well, my grandmother used to do it like this. So we've got to, Imam Sadiq says, live according to the age you are living in. So that's number one. Number two, they remember Allah loudly. What does that mean? Again, I had somebody whom I really respect. Oh, phenomenal man. You probably know him. You know Sheikh Murtaza Al-Dina. You know him, don't you? Many years ago. And that's going a long time ago, long way back. And he came here. And we went to visit somebody together from Stanmore to the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital, which is just down the road. So we just walked down there. And I was walking with him. And you know what? Every 2 minutes he would say, Alhamdulillah, Subhanallah. He looked at a daisy and he would say, Subhanallah. And I'm thinking, is this for my benefit? Sometimes people do that, don't they? But no, my goodness, that man was much higher than that. I sort of went out with him for a few times, and oh my goodness, he used that all the time. And when I read this, it tells me we've got to use this in our daily life. The Alhamdulillah, the Bismillah, the Subhanallah, the Astaghfirullah, Ya Rabbi, rather than Jesus. I love Jesus very much, but Ya Rabbi is cool, and you'll make other people do it. And when people say, what the heaven, you know what they say, right? Yeah. Can you not say, what the heaven? Why use words that are derogatory? That's what this says. That's a sign of a mu'min, by the way. The third sign of a believer is that they're always looking for knowledge. Always. In anything. They want to look and they want to learn a little bit more. My goodness, the fourth thing is, he said, the greater the knowledge, the greater the forbearance. The greater the ability to tolerate nonsense. The greater the ability to have that sabr, to listen and say, oh my goodness, that was wonderful. Yes. The fifth one, and this is really, I think, the benchmark of a Muslim, is when they speak with words that are beautiful. Whoever they speak to, you will not see anger, you will not see gossip, you will not see derogatory words. You will not see anybody putting you down, basically. That's what they do. So these are the 5 things that the Prophet said. And he says, when they resort to a debate, they never use harsh words. They never dispute. They're always soft. So these are 5. But I'd like to do something I do almost every year because I absolutely adore this. These are 12 qualities that are entrenched in the Quran. Surah Al-Furqan is surah number 25 of the Quran. If you've got it on your phones, refer to it. It makes life much, much easier. And this surah is what I call who of the Quran. It tells you who you become if you do not follow this book and who you become if you follow this book. It's really quite simple. And it starts from ayah 63 right to the end. So 12 major qualities. Okay? So if you write these 12 down, make a list, put them on your fridge, tick box them. So the first thing he says, وَعِبَادَ الرَّحْمَنِ. Now we've got to be very careful to understand who he's talking to. Allah is talking to those who are the slaves of the Rahman, who have already submitted, who have already said, I believe إِيَّكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. It's not talking to anybody else. So he says, وَعِبَادِ الرَّحْمَنِ. Now he's giving their qualities. الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ حَوْنًا. When they walk on the earth, they walk with humility. In other words, their way of life is dominated by humility. That's how it works. I've mentioned this story before, but like I said, repetition is good. I used to live in Moshi in Tanzania. It's a tiny little town on the foot of Mount Kilimanjaro. And when there was somebody who wasn't suited booted, we would call them Allahi. Allahi means actually Allahi, right? So there was this person, and he was in a town next to us in Arusha, who was the caretaker of the mosque. And he used to look after the mosque. And, he was a guy who wore flip-flops. His shirt was never tucked in. He was just beautiful, okay? Everybody used to say, oh, what does he know? He will clean the toilets. He will fill your cups for you in the toilets. He will look after you. He'll look after the mosque. And half the time he was marginalized. When he died, he was buried in Arusha, and there was a storm, like really bad rains. Tropical rains are really bad. And all the graves in that graveyard had sunk. And I remember my father, and I was very young, I was about 6, 7. My father went to help sort out those graves. So they helped redig them, cover them again and sort them out. And I still remember the day. It's probably my first memory of my father when he came home and he was in shock. And he just sat down for a little while. And we were asking him, and men normally, when they're in shock, don't say anything, let them be a bit, okay? After a little while, we asked him what had happened. And he said, that man? The one that we just marginalized? He said, I was responsible for sorting out his grave. And he said, when I opened the grave, his body as though it was someone who had laid down there today. As a person be marginalized because he had so much humility. So much humility. Really important to understand what they're saying. Their life is dominated by humility. My grandmother wouldn't let us wear heels in the house because she would say, you are abusing the earth with your tuk, tuk, tuk. That's what she used to say. Don't wear heels, she would say. How can you abuse the earth that will be your home? Right? These are things we need to think about. What else do they do? وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. So 1, humility. 2, now this translation of this says, when they meet those who are ignorant, they say peace. La, la, la. Let's try and understand this. This means that they combat ignorance with kindness. But let me go a bit further. They are sensitive to the feelings of others. When somebody is emotionally charged, there's no point in going on and on at them. Maybe all you need is a hug. Maybe all you need to do is listen. In all situations, you will find them kind. They kill people with their kindness. Does that make sense? So number 1, humility. Number 2, they kill people with their kindness. Even if someone is really, really nasty. Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. He says Hassan ibn Namir, or Hussein ibn Namir, known as somebody who killed Ali al-Akbar. This is in Medina. He meets him outside Medina. And he says, you look like you are not part of this place. You need food, drink, shelter. You look like you're in need. The man started shaking. Ya ibn Rasulullah, you haven't recognized me. He said, I have. I know who you are. But at this moment of time, you are somebody in need. Come home. I will feed you. I will give you some water. I will look after you. Somebody doesn't do salam to us, we don't look at them. When we didn't pick up our phones, we don't look at them. We turn our back. This is not the sign of somebody who is trusting in Allah. All right, so number 1. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep on repeating this. That's what I do with the children. That's the only way it goes in their heads. 1, humility. 2, kill with kindness. Okay, KK. You got that? HKK. Got it right. Okay. Number 3. See what they do. وَالَّذِينَ يُبِيتُونَ لِرَبِّهِمْ سُجَّدًا وَقِيَامًا. They spend their nights standing and in sajda. So when you are dealing with people who are difficult, or you're dealing with life which is difficult anyway, you need energy. It's really tiring to kill people with kindness. You know that? Especially when somebody's barking at you all the time. They continue barking and you still have to smile through it. Sorry, I bring in mother-in-laws all the time. But you know what they do, don't they? Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm one of them. Okay. Mine was beautiful. But, sorry, can we have a salawat? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil faraj. By the time the day is done, you are exhausted. Not even mother-in-laws, kids, my goodness. Okay, so you get exhausted. You need some energizing. So he is saying they energize themselves for their morning activity by talking to their God at night. And it doesn't matter if you can't go on your musalla. For God's sakes, when your eyes open, talk to Him. You can even recite your Salatul Layl on your bed. Do wudu. Start with 1 rakat. 1. Talk to Him. You know the best du'as are answered in sajda, you know that? And have you seen how fast we do our sajdas? My goodness. It's like, by the time you're up. Okay? Alright, so number 1, humility. Number 2, kill them with kindness. Number 3, energize yourself by talking with Him at night. This is Quran, goes, ayah 63 onwards, Furqan. It's something you can look at all the time. وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ. Now look what they say. They're talking to their Rabb. One of the things they say is, رَبَّنَا أَصْرِفْ عَنَّا عَذَابَ جَهَنَّمْ. You know what? Move away from us the punishment of Jahannam. إِنَّ عَذَابَهَا كَانَ غَرَامًا. That punishment is enduring. So basically, if I can translate that, they have a very powerful vision of the akhirah. Very powerful. So if there was something hot, even my grandson, when he sees a lamp, he goes hot. A lamp. Every time he sees he said hot. He speaks a lot of Urdu, by the way. And he says things in Urdu, and I don't even understand half of them. What do you say with hot? He don't say garam, he says something else. Hara, I don't know, something, I don't know. Anyway, so he says hot to this thing, right? So even he understands that if I were to touch this lamp, which is giving me light, it is hot. So these people who have trust in Allah know that if I were to gossip or I were to hurt someone, I know the consequences of that. Imam Khomeini, when sitting with his students, they heard a noise. And he said, that probably is the noise that sounds like somebody reaching the bottomless pit of Jahannam. And, everybody sort of sat up and they said, what are you saying? He said, these are those people who hurt others, who talk about them. And there's a hadith which says when you talk about somebody, your tongue will be as long as the distance between you and that person. So you better not talk about somebody who's in India or Pakistan, no problem, right? And the dogs of hell will feed on it. It's a metaphor. So can you imagine, you open your mouth and you think, oh God, if she's nearer, maybe it's easier. But can you imagine how it works? So they have a very powerful vision of the akhirah. وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا أَنفَقُوا لَمْ يَسْرِفُوا وَلَمْ يَقْتِرُوا وَكَانَ بَيْنَ ذَلِكَ قَوَامًا. My goodness. Now he talks about shopping habits. So we went from this powerful vision of akhirah to number 5, where he says they're not wasteful or they're not too stingy, but they're balanced between the two. So when you look at their shopping habits, they're moderate. They don't go OTT, they don't waste. But on the other hand, the word qatara means to hold back from the necessary items. So, and it's basically actually refers to household items. So they don't say, you have to buy, I'm not going to go into brands, okay, but they don't say you can't get this because it's 2 pence cheaper. I know I have a very dear friend. And every time I speak to her, she tells me what are the good deals in Morrison's or Tesco or whatever. And then I tell her, but what's the difference? And she says 10p. And I say, but you drove up to there, So they're sensible. Their shopping habits are moderate, right? It's really important to understand this. I don't have to elaborate, do I? No, good, okay. Can I add something to it? They have healthy shopping habits, okay? That's my 2 pennies worth. All right, but we won't go into that right now. Right, ayah 68. وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَدْعُونَ مَعَ اللَّهِ إِلَهًا آخَرَ. It says they don't call upon anybody else but Allah. Now I'm saying, Ya Allah, you're not talking about just anyone. You're talking about Ibadar Rahman. Those who already say, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. And you are saying they don't call upon anyone but Allah. Sometimes, just sometimes, we think that we've become so high spiritually that we don't need anything. We don't need to pray. We don't need the extra bits. We don't need to come to mosque. We can hear on YouTube or whatever, online or whatever. There is something about this farsh. There is. There is something about shirk that we need to understand. The Prophet, sitting with his companions, told them, I worry about you. I worry about shirk. And he says, Ya Rasulullah, we pray, we fast, we go for Hajj, we give zakah, we're your companions. He said, no, because it will sneak upon you like a black rock, like a black ant on a black rock on a black night. Now, I'll go a little bit further as well. That's one side of shirk. The other side of shirk is sometimes when we look at that which is close to us, and I'll take the alam or I take the shabi or something like that, and then we suddenly start talking to them rather than using them as a wasila to talk to God. You understand what I'm saying? The first cause is Allah. These are all intermediaries. They don't, even shirk, I go a bit further ahead and explain. Sometimes, and I ask people in Muharram, I get lots of calls from school head teachers who say the children have come into school either late or haven't done their homework in the month of Muharram or are sleeping halfway through their lessons. And I say, why? And they say, well, they say they have important nights. That's not important nights. That's not what Hussein ibn Ali stood for. We cannot say that I spent azadari till midnight and then I didn't wake up for Fajr. That is shirk. That is making myself, that is actually mocking the message of Hussein. They must be balanced. You take the message, definitely come morning till night. I don't know, drink Red Bull, don't. But do whatever you have to, but wake up for Fajr. He stood for these principles, right? And that's why this ayah is saying they don't do shirk. What else do they do? وَيَقْتُلُونَ النَّفْسَ الَّتِي حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ. They don't commit murder. وَلَا يَزْنُونَ. And they don't commit adultery. Now why does Allah put these two in the same bucket? One kills the body, the other kills the soul. Okay? So it says they don't do that. So that basically, I put it all together as number 6, no shirk. Number 7, they don't kill the body, they don't kill the soul. Okay. Let's go to the next one. What do? Illa man taba. So now they've done this. They did shirk. Hope they didn't commit murder because they need to go to prison for that. Okay? They need to have the punishment for that. Or they committed adultery in whatever way. Whether they had a relationship that was not permissible. Maybe I should call it that. Okay, so now what do? Allah says, Illa man taba. He always shows you a way out. Except those who did a U-turn, wa amana, and then they renewed their faith, wa amala amalan salihan, and then they manifested that renewal in doing good deeds. Now look what he does. I love this. Probably the best ayah in here. فَأُولَٰئِكَ يُبْدِلُ اللَّهُ سَيِّئَاتِهِمْ حَسَنَاتٍ. He changes their bad deeds into good. Most people say they do tawbah means you've got a clean slate. He says, not only do you have a clean slate, I put you ahead. And these are people who have made amazingly large mistakes. He says, not only, I repeat it, not only did they do a U-turn and I forgive them, but I actually changed their bad into good. It's phenomenal. All you had to look at was hur. You saw that, didn't you? It's just phenomenal. So they're born again Muslims, number 8. Because they did tawbah. Born again Muslims, you hear this word all the time, right? They renew their faith, they revive their faith, and they change their behaviors. So Allah is saying, changing their behaviors is the amazing form of tawbah. He's telling you and me, I do that, you don't judge. You have no right to judge because you don't know who I forgave. And who did tawbah. You have no right to point fingers at somebody else. It's really important. Look, there's a concept of fiqh. Where if you saw, say I had my grandchild on my lap and you saw a big wet patch. Right? And you saw it was wet. It's called ghaybat Muslim. You know that in Tahara. And I went out for enough time, not even enough time, I went out and came back in again. The patch was still there. And then I was leading salah here. You have no right to tell me that your clothes are najis. Why? You don't have a right to tell me. Because I went out, you saw me, you don't know what I did. I may not have done anything. Now that is a concept of fiqh. But morally it is trying to tell me, you do not have a right to judge me. You don't. You can't judge me and say, well, I heard you did this or I saw you with this. Yeah, it's got nothing to do with you. It's me and my God. Really, really important to understand this, okay? So don't judge. All right, number 9. وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَشْهَدُونَ الزُّورَ. They do not witness falseness. Okay, let's look at this. وَإِذَا مَرَّوْا بِاللَّغْوِ مَرَّوْا كِرَامًا. And when they come up with something that is useless, they turn away in dignity. What does that mean? That means A, they don't give false testimony. 2, they don't watch injustice just like that. They try and do something about it. Whatever little they can do. In Gujarati we say, Fool nahi to fool nahi pankri. If you can't give the flower, at least give a petal. If you see something that's happening in countries, donate a little bit. Anybody can manage 10 pence or 15 pence or a pound or whatever it is. Do whatever you can. And if you can't do anything, in every dua, raise your hands and pray for them in kunut, right? That's what they do. But the other thing is that when they see useless conversation, when they see activities or gatherings that are, they walk away with dignity. They don't recite this ayah and say, well, you know what Quran says? It says, وَإِذَا مَرَّوْا بِاللَّغْوِ مَرَّوْا كِرَامًا. They're not holier than thou, okay? They don't sit there and say, well, you know what, this is useless, I'm not going to sit here. No, they make an excuse. I'm getting really late, I need to leave, maybe I'll see you next time. So when there's, do you like coffee mornings? I do. No? You don't like afternoon tea, these beautiful places where you go, they give you about 20 choices of teas. Oh, come on, tell me you have. You have, okay. And those beautiful things with all those little cakes and what and which. And inevitably there's a conversation. Right? Now, I don't know if this is a privilege. Nobody talks about fun things when they're with me. They don't want to talk about the Quran, please. Yeah. I like Tujh Mein Rab Dikhta Hai as well, okay? But, so, sometimes in these conversations at afternoon teas, when they, if I can say, disintegrate, then it is your duty and my duty here to lift those conversations up, right? Okay, to be British, talk about the weather. It's okay, all right? So these are, maybe you could talk about recipes. That's something I could go into. Okay, next one. وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا ذُكِّرُوا بِآيَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ. When they are reminded, when they are exposed to the signs of their Rabb, لَمْ يَخِرُّوا عَلَيْهَا سُمًّا وَعُمْيًا. Now, if you were to read the translation, it says they fall down, they don't turn a deaf ear and a blind eye. But let me tell you, when they're exposed to the signs of their Rabb, they focus, they pay attention, they listen and they submit. Sometimes, because we hear so many majalis, we hear and hear and hear and hear and we don't listen. We just hear. So if somebody was to tell you, what was number 10? And you say, Pata nahi, I don't know what she was talking about. So I'm telling you what I'm talking about. Number 10 is listen. When it's talking about the Quran, have you seen those cartoons with Bugs Bunny and the ears go up? That's number 10. Ears should go up. As soon as they say Quran, as soon as they say Allah, put your ears up. Listen. Because that listening has an effect on you. Has a phenomenal effect, okay? Number 11, oh, I love this. وَالَّذِينَ, I'm going to take 5 more minutes. وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ, and this is a dua that I need you to learn, and you all know it. رَبَّنَا حَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. It is so beautiful. Please put it in every kunut. I'll give it to you. I'll give you bookmarks if you want. Stick it on your musallas. Start. Say it with me. Rabbana hablana min azwajina wa dhurriyyatina qurrata a'yun. It's so beautiful. Waj'alna lil muttaqina imama. And I got to explain this. I've done this every single year. Qurrata a'yun is such happiness that your eyes cry. It is an idiom. In the Arab world, when a rider went out in the desert and there was a sandstorm, he could only cover his face up to here. He couldn't cover his eyes. And the sand would get into his eyes, and his eyes would weep with warmth, right? And when he got to an oasis, he would say, I have reached my qurrata a'yun. I have reached the coolness of my eyes. And this dua is phenomenal. It's saying, Ya Allah, make my spouse and make my children and make my family, those when I see them, they are a coolness to my eyes. By extension, make me someone whom when my family looks at me, they find coolness in their eyes. Not somebody who's on Instagram, Facebook and always tick, 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 okay? Not somebody who when they see, they think, oh God, shall I walk in and sneak past her room or not? Mother-in-laws again, okay? Then you need to have daughter-in-laws who come and hug you. You need to have those. And not that artificial hug, huh? That really nice, close hug, okay? So these people are very, very family-orientated. We are told this is the dua of Imam Ali, and look at the progeny he had, okay? So if he did that dua, we can do that dua too. And finally, number 12. This is the last ayah. قل ما يعبو ربكم قل ما يعبو بكم ربي لولا دعاؤكم. Your master would not care for you if it wasn't for your du'as. They are constantly talking to Allah. Constantly. You don't have to talk in the formal fashion. You don't. Those du'as that we were taught by the Masumeens are there, so they're a benchmark of how to talk. Have you seen the dua Arafah of Imam Hussein? My goodness, gratitude all the way through. You don't know how to thank him, read dua Arafah. So they are constantly talking to God. Doesn't matter if you look stupid while you're driving and you're just talking. That's okay, you're allowed. Just talk to him. Talk to him generally as you would talk to anybody else. He is our God. You need to talk. Incidentally, in your qunut, you can have your du'as of Quran, but you can also talk to him. Now, I was talking about friends, right? And you need this friend. You need this really, really awesome friend. So find an Ahlul Bayti friend, please. And then when you find them, like Imam Ali says, hold on so tight that you don't lose them. So Imam Hussein al-Islam has that sort of a friend. Starts from childhood. Mazahir is once walking with the Prophet, it's narrated. And they're walking, and suddenly the Prophet stops. And as he stops, he sits down on the ground. Habib is there as well. He takes Habib in his arms, and he kisses Habib. And Mazahir said, what did my son do? And he said, have you not been seeing what your son is doing? Everywhere my Hussein walks, Habib picks up the earth from under his feet and he kisses it. Allah in the Quran says, وَمَن يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّهُ تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ. The one who gives importance to the signs of Allah, they have taqwa in their hearts. On the night of Ashura, Imam Hussein put off the lights and told everyone, go, just go. You've done your bit. But to one person he said, come. When he got to Karbala and he's surrounded, he writes to Habib and he sends a messenger quickly to Kufa. The messenger knocks on the door and he says, Ana Qasidul Hussein, I'm a messenger from Hussein. Habib takes the letter. He kisses the letter. There's a curfew in Kufa. We're told that Habib and his wife are sitting together, and the wife is watching while Habib is reading this letter, and she's impatient. She doesn't have patience, and she says, what does Hussein say? And he says, my Mawla says that he's surrounded and he's calling me. And she said, what are you doing sitting there? Go quickly. And he says, I'm worried about you. And she says, you're worried about me? And the son of Fatima is calling you? Just go. When Imam gets there, we're told Imam tells him, forgive me, Habib, for I cannot look after you like a friend looks after a friend. I don't have anything to do your mehmangiri, that you are my guest, Habib. We find throughout the days Habib was there. He is the watchman. He stands in front in the tent. If you wanted to go and see Hussein, you had to go through Habib. That was his dua. And today also when you go to the haram of Imam Hussein, Habib is at the entrance like a watchman. You want to go to Hussein? You want a wasila with Hussein? Today in your tears say, Ya Hussein, I ask you in the name of Habib. See what happens. See what happens. He was a friend. On the day of Ashura, it's time for Zuhr. Abu Thamama ibn Sa'idi tells Imam, Salatul Zuhr. Imam says, may Allah place you amongst the Musalleen. He says, Habib, go to the other side. Tell them to give us time to pray. When Habib goes over there, Hussein ibn Namir says, pray as many prayers as you like. Allah will not accept your prayers. And Habib says, are you telling me that Allah will accept your prayer and not the prayer of Hussein? He says, Hussein, let me go. I need to go. I cannot handle this sort of attitude. The enemies surround him. When he falls, he says, Assalamu alayka ya Habibi. Accept my salams from afar. That's what friends do. They don't want their friends to be hurt. But Imam runs. He goes with Abu Thamama and he places Habib's head on his lap. He says, what an excellent friend you were. You would recite Quran for the whole night. Look at how Imam describes him. Exactly what we said. He energized himself with the Quran. Habib calls Abu Thamama and he says, Abu Thamama, I need to do a wasi. Abu Thamama says, why do you want to tell me? I am coming along the same path as you have. He says, no, I need to tell you something. He says, Usika hadha rajul al-mazloom. Do not let go of this man on whom injustice is done. But I want to tell Habib, you told Abu Thamama at Zuhr, do not let go of this man. Let me take you to Asr, Habib. Habib, he was alone. He was alone and he was saying, Hal min nasiri yansurna, hal min mughithi yughithuna. Is there anyone to help us? Is there anyone who will come to our aid? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un.